Hey ladies, welcome to the Grit, Growth, Grace podcast. If we haven't met, my name is Anne Marie. I'm wife to James and mom to 4 beautiful kids. This one is very big, from 9 months up to 8 years. My hope is to help other women experience the postpartum period all the way up to the first year of baby's life as a time of grit, growth, and grace. Hey lady, this is episode 20, all about stretching your budget during postpartum. Okay, so this is going to be quite an episode because it's just been quite a day. So about, 3 hours ago now, I think we got a knock on the door and a sidewalk is being put in outside of our home. The entire side of our street is getting a sidewalk put in, and the gentleman told us that they had hit our gas line when they were digging. So all of us left, I left with the kids, and so they're still here fixing things. We're back now. But they are still here fixing things, and there have been 1 or 2 other things today that have just been like, oh, okay, all right, so that's happening. And so this is going to be a little bit different from usual. Typically, just to give you sort of a behind the scenes, typically I think ahead of time about everything that I want to say, and then I type it all out. And then when I'm recording, I'm actually primarily reading it. And the reason for that is twofold. One, it saves my time and your time if I am not saying and thinking and all of those pauses and breathing noises that are annoying but also take time. It's important to me to maximize both your time and my own. So I do that for that reason. But then also because, especially if it's a sensitive topic, I want to be thinking ahead of time about how does this sound? And if I write it out and then I read it, usually in that process I can discern how is this going to come off? Because sometimes, as you know, sometimes things sound differently or come out differently than they sounded in your head. So today's going to be a little bit different. I've written down a couple of rough notes for things, but there may be ums and pauses and just sort of filler noises, I suppose, that we do when we are speaking off the cuff. Heads up as well, this is going to be actually 2 parts. So the first part today is going to be talking about stretching your budget, but then the second part next week is going to be talking about how to get on the same page as your husband about financial matters in particular. Okay, all of that out of the way. So the script that sort of guides my thoughts for everything today is I'm a responsible steward of my family's resources. I'm a responsible steward of my family's resources. Another way you could say that would be I work with what we've got. So with the resources that we have, material, physical, emotional, and otherwise, I work with what we have to provide the best that I can for my family. If that is you as well, seeking to be a responsible steward of your family's resources, I want to start by talking a little bit about 2 big rocks, I'll call them. If we're stretching our budget, we can do lots of little things, and I'm going to talk about plenty of little things, but I think there are 2 big things that could actually make a significant difference, and 2 among many, but 2 that I'm going to address today. So the first one is, and this applies to you specifically if you gave birth at a hospital, or bonus points if you were listening to this beforehand and have not yet given birth but are going to give birth in a hospital. So a little bit less relevant if you gave birth at home. And some of it may work with a birth center and the way that they charge, but it will be particularly relevant for hospital births. So this may not be something you can use right now if you gave birth 6 months ago, let's say, but I would love for it to be something that you share with a friend or in the future if it helps you then. Lowering your hospital bill, right? Because having a baby costs a large amount of money. There are lots of things that you can do in relation to this. One of them, and the easiest one, is to apply for financial aid. Apply for financial aid. The amount of paperwork that you have to fill out is not negligible. I will acknowledge that. I don't enjoy it. And when I do it, it usually lasts or is good for 6 months, the application. But they also will retroactively apply it. So if you have any outstanding bills at the time that you apply from, let's say, a month or 2 ago, they will, once they approve your application, they will apply it a year backwards, I think. So let's say that you give birth and you haven't been able to pay your bills yet, or they haven't come yet, and it's now a month or 2 later. If you fill out the application, but don't pay the bills yet, just pause on them and say, I've got an application submitted. They will, once they approve it, then apply whatever amount is approved to your previous bills. So it takes a while to fill out the application, but at our hospital, which is a Catholic hospital, and I've noticed that this seems to be different between the Catholic hospital in our nearest big town and the not Catholic, I don't know, the secular hospital, they essentially only take Medicare, Medicaid patients, but our Catholic hospital has much more generous financial aid, and they actually have on their website, you can look, there's a guide that tells you based on what percentage your income is above federal poverty guidelines, that's the amount of financial aid that you can expect. So that's this very single biggest thing I could recommend. If it's available to you in the hospital that you have worked with or are working with, do that. Do that. It's a headache to apply. I don't deny that. But it can make a huge difference. Thousands and thousands of dollars potentially of difference to you. Also, depending on the time of year that you're giving birth, let's say that you're giving birth in November, December, or even October, maybe into September. If you only have several months of premiums left to pay for the year, and let's say that your baby is born and you know, oh, they are a NICU baby, or you know that they might be in the NICU, or that you ended up needing extra care. Your insurance plan changes when you add a new dependent. So what we did when my daughter was born in December of 2016, we knew, right, she was born and then she ended up needing to have surgery and she was in the NICU for 5 days. So what we did is when we added her as a dependent through the end of the year, which was just at that point 11 more days, we switched to the lowest deductible plan so that we hit our out-of-pocket max the soonest. Yes, the premiums go up, but we were only paying 1 or 2 premiums. I think 1, really, at that point. But like I said, the out-of-pocket max went way down. And so rather than our out-of-pocket max being, let's say, $12,000, it was $6,000. So everything beyond that for this very costly stay that she had and surgery, all of it was completely covered. And then, because the plan starts over on January 1st, then we went right back to our regularly scheduled programming, I'll call it. So that's something to consider too. If it's the right time of year where it's getting towards the end, you might consider changing your plan until January 1st to capitalize on the benefits available there. Another thing you can try to lower your hospital bill would be to do cash pay or self-pay. Now, either of those, some places don't offer a cash pay option, but some will. They'll offer you a discount essentially if you write them a check as opposed to going through your insurance. Self-pay similarly, some places are not very transparent about their pricing. My OB's office is one of them, but it's something that you can pursue as well. You can just call and say, hey, like, what is the percentage off if we do self-pay instead of going through insurance? So that would be something to look into as well. Now, when I got pregnant last time with my son, who is 14 months, I believe I'm saying this right, at that time my OB's office was out of network with my insurance company. And so to have out-of-network insurance was just going to be exorbitantly expensive, but I did self-pay and I got what is called a good faith estimate at the beginning of the pregnancy. That's where they said, okay, if you get all of your prenatal care from us and your OB care and your 6-week follow-up visit from our office, this is the maximum amount that we will charge you if it's an uncomplicated vaginal delivery. And so that they were able to honor that. So even though I wasn't an insurance patient with them, it was self-pay. That good faith estimate told me up front, here's what the bundled or global cost for all of that is going to be. The last thing that I'll say about lowering your hospital bill is this. If you did not get good care, if something happened, I don't know what the something was, but some part of it was not standard operating procedure, you can negotiate your bill. This is what I did when my son was born. I called afterwards. I had already formally spoken to the channels that I needed to, saying through both my OB practice and then also the hospital, this is the care that I got and it was not acceptable, and they had acknowledged that. And so I asked them for my bill to be reduced because I did not get standard care, standard, reasonable, acceptable care. It was uncomfortable having those conversations, absolutely, but it did lead to $1,000 off of my bill. So I don't wish that for you, of course, to have a subpar experience. But if it has been your experience, I'm just putting this out there for you. You are 100% able to ask for a reduction in your bill for that reason. Okay, so that's big rock number one. Your hospital bill can be a very expensive bill. I was going to say very expensive expense. Whatever. That's redundant. In postpartum. Something else you can do to increase your earning potential is to ask for a raise. This could be for you if you work in some capacity outside the home or work from home, or it could be for your husband. And this time in this episode, I'm just going to focus on you. Next time, I'll focus on how to have a conversation, and really it's a series of conversations, but how to have, a conversation with your husband in a respectful way if you think him asking for a raise would be a good thing. But this is for you. Okay, so asking for a raise for you. I wonder how that sits with you. Is that something you think you could do? If your immediate thought is no, what if you thought about it a bit longer? If your immediate thought is that's impossible, is it? I don't know. I don't know your situation. But if you were thinking with every possibility on the table, is that something you could do? And is the answer, I can't ask for a raise? Or is it, I won't ask for a raise? Is it that I can't? Or is it that I won't? I don't want to. But if there's a part of you that thinks maybe I could do that, here's just a little bit of invitation for you to consider. You might think, I would never ask for a raise because I would have no idea what to say. Well, in very loose, broad, generalized terms, I'll give you a little bit of a heads up here. I just asked for a raise in my part-time job. It's over 10 hours a week as a managing editor. I just asked for a raise back in the spring. And I asked for a conversation that was a video call. I asked via email for that conversation, and I just said I would love to discuss compensation and increasing so-and-so company's investment in me. I have some really great ideas for things that I would love to do, and I'd love to have a conversation about how we can make that happen. And you just enter into it with good faith, right? Knowing that you're going to be nervous, and so is the other person probably, really. Knowing that you're going to be nervous, and so is the other person. But bringing to the table, here's what I've done already. Here's my proof of value. Here's what I'd like to do still. And then you just say, I'm putting this invitation out there for X company to invest further in me because I would love to be able to commit, for instance, this amount of hours or this many, to this project, knowing that I am doing the best that I can for my family, and here's the amount that would allow for me to do my best for them and to do my best for you. So you bring to that conversation a sense of what you've already done so they can see the proof is in the pudding. But that proof of concept, that's what I was trying to think of earlier. So you say what you've already done, and then you say what you'd like to do still, when you guys are able to come to an agreement on this, not if, but when. And then you just reiterate how important the mission of whatever the project, company, organization, contractee, whatever, is to you. And you always ask for more than what you would like because it's a negotiation. And so you're going to say a number and then they're going to come back and say a number. And that's just how that's going to go. So you ask for more than what you are hoping for, expecting that you will land somewhere a little bit less than that usually. And I would always just encourage you to overshoot. To be a little bit more confident or have a little bit more bravado, I would say, than maybe you actually feel, because we tend to underestimate the value of what it is that we're bringing to the table. And if you are somebody who is diligent, who is hardworking, who shows up every time and who gives her very best, you are already far superior to many other workers. So what you are bringing at a bare bones base level is already a great place to start. And then everything that you do that is specialized on top of that, or where you are the expert in one area, or you're the person everybody turns to for X, Y, or Z, that is something great to bring to the table. And one other thing too is that we value what we pay for. And if you seek to have more influence within your position, your corporation, your company, they will value what you say to the extent that they have paid you for your opinion. So I would just simply invite you to look through that lens. That lens might be a little bit funny or foreign to you right now, but big rocks, if you're trying to stretch your budget during postpartum, I'd love for you to decrease your hospital bill to the extent that you can. And I'd love for you to ask for a raise, or your husband, or both of you. Okay, miscellaneous things. Have you negotiated your internet bill? Have you negotiated your internet bill? I am paying $15 less a month now than when we contracted with our internet provider 7 years ago to move to this house. And that's because, frankly, we are still using the bare bones internet coverage compared to what everybody else and their brother is using, right? With fiber optic and this, that, and the other thing. So if you are still using the bare bones package, call once a year and just say, hey, what further discounts can be applied? I make that phone call one time a year to my internet company, and like I said, we are now paying $29.99 for that service. So it used to be $45, I think, something. Now we're paying like $30. Something else to consider. Can you prepay your phone plan? We decreased our phone bill by $25 a month, I think. And again, our phones are super bare basic packages, right? Like, we're not video gaming with our phones or our internet or anything like that. So bare bones, though, we are paying $25 less a month by prepaying, just 1 month at a time, and there's no contract. But we are saving money through doing that. A question I'd love for you to ask yourself is, where is my money going? For example, I personally saw that, we spent $200 eating out in September. How about that? So where's your money going? And then, where do you want it to go? If you don't have a budget, I'd love for you to have a budget. But I also recognize that maybe during postpartum, maybe some of your mental energy is going to other things. And you might be like, Anne-Marie, if I don't have the energy to create a budget, how am I going to have time to ask for a raise? Well, because a raise might make you a ton more money than a budget, at least like upfront. But so anyway, maybe you don't have a budget, and maybe that is a to-do thing down the road. Okay, but at a minimum, can you review your credit card and your checking account statements every month and just ask yourself, where is your money going? And where do you want it to go? That puts you back in the driver's seat, as opposed to money just flying out of your account, usually through auto spends, right? It just goes all by itself. But this puts you back in the driver's seat. I also would love for you to ask yourself, do we need this? Or do we use this? Specifically, are our subscriptions, right, the auto payments that we're making every month, are they serving us, or is it the other way around? Do we need this? Do we use this? Another key principle is to only spend on what matters to you. Ramit Sethi is the author of I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and I've talked about this a long time ago, but he wrote an example in his book of a man who spent $21,000 a year going out, right? Like bars, restaurants, clubs, going out. But he had zero decor on his walls because he never had guests. He never entertained. That man knew quite clearly what his priorities were, and he spent in line with them. What matters to you, and only spend on that. Ruthlessly cut costs in other areas. For myself, I have realized sewing does not matter to me. I asked for a sewing machine when I graduated high school, and I got it, and I thought, I'm going to use this, I'm going to sew things for my family. I didn't realize, first of all, how much fabric costs. But over time, after making a series of lackluster Christmas pillowcases, I just realized, this is not getting any easier, and I am not enjoying this. So finally, I gave it away. So I don't know what does or doesn't matter to you, or what you started out thinking like, I'm going to save money by doing this thing. But I would love for you to spend money on the things that matter to you and let go of the things that don't. One thing that does matter to me to spend money on are high quality prenatal vitamins. That does matter because I've noticed a difference in how I feel when I'm taking them versus the generic stuff that I was getting at the grocery store before. A couple of other... Oh, I got people screaming in the background. Hold on. Let's take a pause. And we're back. I hope. We'll see. We got just a couple minutes more here. All right, household items. I learned a couple years ago from a friend to actually avoid major extremes in temperature. So instead of making sure that your house is, let's say 65 degrees at night, it gets down that low, or 62 degrees, but then during the day you want it to be warmed up to 72 degrees, what I learned is more to try to stay a little bit closer in terms of temperature. So maybe you just let it get down to 68 at night and 72 during the day. But I learned that that actually lowers your bills overall if your house is not having to warm itself way up or cool itself way down. So I don't know what makes sense for your family, but you might consider, how can I adjust the thermostat in a way that avoids temperature extremes from night to day? And if you have a smart thermostat, that's also something you can set if you're going to be gone for a period of time, and you don't need the house cooled or you don't need the house heated, that you can adjust your temperatures given that. Something else you can do is to change your air filter in your furnace every 3 months or more often if you need it. If you get basic maintenance things done in your house, just like with your car, you will extend the life of whatever that appliance is or whatever that vehicle is. So, sure, stretch what you can, but also get the regular maintenance done to make sure things stay in working order so that they do not burn out, fade, etc., so that they don't have problems. I used to try to push it with oil changes. Because I had read that you could go lots further than what it said on the sticker that you got from the oil change shop, from the mechanics. And then I showed up to the mechanics and he said, your oil is sludge and that will destroy your, did he say engine? It will destroy your engine. So anyhow, I no longer recommend that. I get the maintenance done as recommended. And now actually my husband changes our oil. So that's something to consider. Maybe you or your husband want to YouTube how to change your oil. Maybe you can save the money for that. But whomever changes your oil or does your other maintenance, make sure that it happens when it's supposed to. Something else you consider would be to run laundry after laundry load so that while that dryer is hot, you can maximize the heat, right, from one load to the next, rather than it cooling down and heating back up again, cooling down, heating back up again. Okay, and then, we have just 2 sections left. Great. Food. Food. I love talking about this. This would be a whole episode. Is your Sam's Club, Costco, etc., big box store membership helping or hurting you? This is just a question. It's just a question for you to consider. We don't have one of those memberships right now because I am confident enough that it would lead me to overspend, because it'd be like, oh my gosh, a gigantic thing of cheese balls. Well, nutritionally, we don't need cheese balls, first of all. But then a gigantic one, like, wow, that'd be great. So that might be a $20 expense for something that I didn't even walk into the store thinking I needed, but now I'm going to buy it, and they only have it in a massive quantity. So what happens to my grocery budget when that happens? You may have more self-control than my cheese ball problem. You may. But I'm just asking you, inviting you to consider that. Like, while we're putting options on the table here, what is that working for you, or is it not? I'd also ask, how can you cut down on eating out by stocking your freezer? When my husband used to say, let's just keep some frozen pizzas or frozen chicken tenders in our freezer, I demurred because I said they're not healthy. But hey, they are no less healthy than eating out because I'm too tired or I got home late from errands and ran out of time, etc. And they are far less expensive than going out to eat. So go ahead and stock your freezer with a couple options. And because this isn't about survival mode, but about strategy, go ahead and stock some frozen veggies alongside them. You can make a perfectly legit meal with frozen pizza or frozen chicken tenders and fries, plus microwavable or steamable Brussels sprouts or butternut squash or some other veggie of your choice. And then maybe your effort goes to cutting up carrots or apples or putting a salad together. There are lovely ideas for saving on food on the Frugal Fit Mom channel on YouTube, including what I'm getting into now, sheet pan dinners, which are becoming our regular Wednesday standby. And I would also love for you to plan a night in the week that dinner will come from the freezer, whether it's from the grocery store's freezer or something you made yourself and froze. I'd love for you to build sort of that cushion into your meal planning, if you don't already, to say simply, maybe I'm not going to cook every night of the week, or maybe I cook a couple nights, my husband does a couple nights, but rather than that night coming up and being like, what are we going to do? We're eating out. What if you just said, oh no, I'm prepared for this. I've got food. As you have more time and energy, right? So maybe not right away, but down the road, are there things you would like to make yourself? Are there things you would like to make yourself or that other people can give to you, food-wise, that are free? Our friends keep us stocked in potatoes during the fall and sweet corn for 3 weeks in the summer. We eat sweet corn for pretty much every supper, with every supper, right? Not the only food, for about 3 weeks every single summer. And for the month of August this past year, fellow parishioners brought extra zucchini and left it in the back of church every Sunday. And so every Sunday we had zucchini with our supper. Another local lady kept us stocked on bell peppers that would otherwise have gone bad, and the cost was nothing. The prep was minimal. There are a few things I now make myself as well for our family, including pasta sauce for my son's Roma tomatoes and my mother-in-law's crock-pot recipe. I also make chicken broth, though I learned that pork broth, if you're making that from like bones of a pork roast, that doesn't taste that good. So maybe don't try pork broth. But chicken broth, beef broth in the crock pot, those things I'd recommend. And then I make your own bread now. Not a ton of things that take very little time and are now at this point pretty much mindless, but those can save a little bit on food as well. And then the creme de la creme, free things. I love to find all the free things to do with my kids. I want them to have as many incredible activities and experiences as we possibly can without breaking the budget, without being resentful about the cost. So here is the ho-hos in the dish story, I must tell you. My husband and I were walking along the road behind our house, I think, 6 months ago maybe, and in the ditch I saw a box of ho-hos, like Hostess ho-hos. Well, now granted, the box was open, but the ho-hos were not. They were individually packaged. Now, my husband was aghast. He was literally horrified. He's like, Amory, you cannot eat those ho-hos. I was like, James, they're individually packaged. They're fine. And what we ended up coming to was he agreed to make me cookies so that I would not touch the ho-hos in the ditch that were free. So, I don't know where you fall on the spectrum between my husband and I when it comes to free things. But I simply say that to say I always have my eye out for free things. We took the kids to a train show a couple of weeks back at the state fairgrounds. Adults had to pay, but the kids were all free. My kids know that whenever it's free bagel week every year at Panera, we go. We get a free bagel every day. In September, Chick-fil-A did a free drink every Thursday if you had the app. So we did not pay a lick of money. Not a lick. I just went and got a free drink that everybody got to share on Thursdays. This month they've been doing free treats. So I've been going to get the free cookie or whatever it is. Again, not paying anything except just getting the cookie. So all that. There was an event that Shields held, our sporting goods store, that got free bike helmets to kids. They had like an insurance company agent's name on them. That was really fun. I will get the kids free haircuts from new hairstylists at a salon. And of course you have to pay, right? You pay the tip, but the haircut would be free. You could see maybe a practice performance of a show that's going to be performed. When I was growing up, we could go see the practice performance of the Nutcracker for free. So they, something might be a little funny, but for the most part, it was a really excellent show. There might be free or low-cost days at your local kids' gym. We'll take the kids to the splash pad, the library, the parks. We'll take them to free museum days. The Young Audubon Society taught a free pollinators class so the kids could learn all about pollinators. And they also organized a firefly walk that one of our Grandma Tribe members took the kids on. So all of this simply to say, if you are trying to stretch your budget during postpartum, I'd love for you to consider the big rocks first. How can you knock down significant bills or significantly increase your income during that time? And then on top of that, what are the miscellaneous ways? Not that you're going to adopt everything, right? Or scribble all these down on a piece of paper. That's not what I mean. You certainly don't have to do things the way that we do. I'm simply saying I would love for you to consider what would make sense and be the least amount of energy for your family. So that's part one. Next week, let's talk about how to get on the same page as our husbands, especially regarding finances in a way that is respectful of our spouse, ourselves, our marriage. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.